village lay nestled by the sea, its cottages built with stone and wood. The air was always filled with the smell of salt and the faint scent of fish. Every day, the waves crashed against the shore, their sound like a constant song. The villagers, simple people, worked hard. The men went out to fish, the women tended to their homes, and the children played by the beach. In the center of the village stood a fountain. The water sparkled under the sun, and the villagers often gathered around it, laughing and chatting. They were close-knit, living simple lives without much luxury. It was a peaceful place where the sea met the land and where life moved slowly but steadily. Selene lived in this village with her husband, Tomas. He was a fisherman, strong and hard-working. He loved Selene deeply and thought they had a perfect life. But Selene felt differently. She was beautiful. Everyone knew that. She had long, dark hair and eyes that seemed to look right through you. She knew her beauty gave her power, and she used it to her advantage. However, she longed for something more, something bigger than her quiet life with Thomas. She wanted adventure, excitement, and attention. Tomas didn't understand. He was content with their simple life. Every morning, he went out to sea with his nets, returning at dusk to find Selene waiting for him. She greeted him with a smile, but it wasn't the smile of someone completely happy. Tomas didn't see it. He only saw his loving wife. But Selene was not satisfied. She looked out at the horizon and dreamed of a life beyond the village. She dreamed of something more exciting. Tomas didn't know that his wife felt trapped in her own life. One day, while walking along the beach, Selene saw a figure in the distance. As she got closer, she noticed it was a young man, tall and strong. His clothes were different from the fisherman's clothes, and he had a sailor's look. His name was Adrian, and he was new to the village. He worked on a ship that came in from time to time. Adrian looked at Selene, his eyes shining with interest. "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen," he said, with a smile that made her heart race. Selene felt a twinge of excitement. She had always liked the attention she received, but Adrian's words were different. They were not like the usual compliments from the villagers. There was something deeper in his gaze, something more daring. She smiled back, but with a hint of playfulness. "Thank you," she replied. "You're not from here, are you?" Adrian shook his head. "No, I'm a sailor. I come from a faraway place, but I think I've found something worth staying for." He looked her up and down, his eyes lingering for a moment longer than usual. Selene felt a flutter in her chest. She had never met anyone quite like Adrian. His confidence was magnetic, and she felt drawn to him in a way she had never felt before. Over the next few days, Selene and Adrian met several times. They walked along the cliffs, talking and laughing. Selene found herself opening up to him in ways she hadn't with Tomas. Adrian listened carefully, always complimenting her, making her feel special. "You deserve more than this life, Selene," he said one afternoon as they sat by the sea, watching the waves crash against the rocks. "You are too beautiful to be trapped in a small village. You should have excitement, adventure." Selene looked at him, her heart racing. "I don't know," she said, her voice soft. "But sometimes I feel like there is something more out there, something I'm missing." Adrian smiled, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Maybe I can show you what you've been missing." As the days passed, Selene found herself growing more and more drawn to Adrian. He made her feel alive in a way that Tomas never did. Adrian's confidence and adventurous spirit were a world apart from Tomas's quiet, hard-working nature. Tomas loved her, but he couldn't give her the excitement she craved. Selene's secret meetings with Adrian became more frequent. They spent time together by the sea, talking, laughing, and sharing stories. Adrian took her to hidden places on the cliffs, places no one else knew about. They kissed, and Selene felt a thrill she had never known before. Her feelings for Adrian grew stronger with each passing day. Tomas had no idea. He went about his work, trusting Selene to care for their home. But Selene felt herself slipping further away from him. She couldn't help it. Adrian made her feel seen, desired, and wanted. She wanted to keep him in her life, but she couldn't shake the guilt that grew inside her. Still, she didn't want to stop. Adrian made her feel powerful, special. Tomas didn't make her feel that way. And so, she continued her secret meetings with Adrian, knowing that it was only a matter of time before Tomas would notice. One afternoon, Thomas returned from a fishing trip earlier than expected. He had been planning to surprise Selene with a special dinner, but instead, he walked into their home and found her in the arms of Adrian. Selene froze, her heart racing. She tried to pull away from Adrian, but Thomas had already seen enough. His face twisted with pain and anger. "Selene, how could you?" he asked, his voice shaking with hurt. Selene tried to explain. "Tomas, it's not what you think. But Tomas cut her off. "No, I've seen enough. You've betrayed me." His voice was low, filled with sadness. "I trusted you." Tears welled up in Selene's eyes, but she didn't know what to say. She loved Tomas, but not in the way she loved Adrian. The excitement Adrian brought into her life was something Tomas could never offer. Tomas stood there for a moment, looking at her, his heart breaking. Then, without saying another word, he turned and left the house. Selene stood in the silence of their empty home, the weight of her choices settling on her shoulders. She had lost Tomas, and now she was left with nothing. After Thomas left, Selene felt a deep emptiness settle within her. She had lost her husband, the one man who had loved her, who had trusted her. She tried to reach out to him, but he had already made up his mind. Thomas had moved on, and that realization crushed Selene. She needed to find someone to fill the void. And so she turned to Adrian. Adrian welcomed her into his life, but with less passion than Selene had hoped for. He didn't love her as Thomas had, but he enjoyed her company. He had no problem having her around. After all, she was beautiful, and people always noticed them together. But deep down, Selene felt the difference. Adrian was kind to her, but he wasn't there for her in the way Thomas had been. He didn't look at her with the same adoration. Selene tried to convince herself that she didn't mind. She told herself that she was better off with Adrian, that he could give her the adventure she sought. But the reality was that Adrian treated her more like a companion than a lover. He would often leave for long periods, traveling with his ship, leaving Selene behind in his small, unremarkable home near the village. The more time she spent with him, the more she realized that her need for excitement had led her into another kind of trap. Adrian was charming, yes, but his attention was always divided. He had many other women in different villages, and he was not afraid to let Selene know. He never promised her anything, and deep down, she knew she wasn't as important to him as he was to her. Selene began to grow restless again. Adrian, although fun and carefree, was not the answer to her unhappiness. She had made a mistake in leaving Thomas behind. But it was too late now. Adrian seemed to want nothing more than to keep her around for his own pleasure, and Selene couldn't find the courage to leave him. One day, while Adrian was away, Selene found herself walking alone along the cliffs. The sky was cloudy, and the waves below crashed violently against the rocks. The beauty of the sea had always captivated her, but today it felt cold and distant. She longed for the warmth of Thomas's presence, for the way he had always looked at her with love and devotion. But Thomas was gone, and she was left with Adrian, whose affection was as fleeting as the tide. Ava had always been Selene's childhood friend, though they had grown apart over the years. Ava was content with her simple life, her home, and her loving husband, Eli. Unlike Selene, Ava never craved the attention or admiration of others. She was content with the quiet, peaceful life she shared with Eli, a hard-working fisherman who was as kind as he was loyal. Ava didn't see much of Selene anymore, but she always had a feeling that something was wrong. There was a change in Selene's behavior, something Ava couldn't quite put her finger on. It wasn't until one day, when Eva came home early from the market that she realized what had been happening. Eva walked into her house to find Selene sitting with Eli. The two women were talking, but the way Selene was looking at Eli made Eva uncomfortable. Her eyes lingered on him in a way that was too suggestive, too flirtatious. Eva's stomach twisted as she saw Selene's subtle, calculated smile. "What is this, Selene?" Eva asked, her voice trembling. She didn't know what to think, but she knew something was wrong. Selene stood up, a smooth smile on her face. "Oh, Eva, I was just telling Eli about the sea. We were talking about the waves and how they change with the weather." But Eva didn't buy it. She could see the way Selene was eyeing Eli, the way her body language changed when she spoke to him. It wasn't just about the sea. There was something else, something that made Eva feel like an outsider in her own home. Selena was always beautiful, but now it seemed as though she was using that beauty to manipulate and control. Eva's heart sank. She had never seen this side of Selene before. She had always trusted her, but now she wasn't so sure. "Selene, please," Eva said, her voice quiet but firm. "What are you doing?" Selene raised an eyebrow, a playful glint in her eyes. "What do you mean, Eva? I'm just being friendly." But Eva wasn't convinced. She could feel the tension in the air, a weight she hadn't noticed before. Selene was no longer the friend she had once known. There was something different, something darker in the way she behaved. "I don't like this, Selene," Eva said, her voice shaking slightly. "You need to leave." Selene smiled sweetly, but there was no warmth in her smile. "I'm sure you're just being silly, Eva," she said, then walked toward the door. "I'll leave you two alone. Don't worry about me." Eva watched as Selene left, her mind racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that her friend had crossed a line. But what could she do? Selene was no longer the simple village girl she once knew. As the days passed, Selene began to notice the cracks in her relationship with Adrian. She had tried to convince herself that she was happy, but it was becoming increasingly clear that she was not. Adrian, though charming, had no interest in her beyond the physical. He had other women, and Selene was just one of many. Selene began to grow tired of the life she had chosen. Adrian was not the answer to her unhappiness, and in fact, he made her feel more alone than ever. She had hoped that he would give her the adventure she longed for, but instead, he had only provided more emptiness. She tried to talk to him about her feelings, but he brushed her off. "Selene, you know I can't be tied down," he said. "You knew what this was." The words stung. She had known, But she had hoped it would be different. She had hoped that Adrian would love her, that he would be the one to fill the void inside her. But she had been wrong. Meanwhile, Tomas had moved on with his life. He had found someone new in the village, someone who made him happy. Selene heard rumors, and the thought of Tomas with someone else twisted in her chest. She had hurt him, and now she had no one. Adrian left for a long journey one morning, leaving Selene alone in the small house. She stared out at the sea. The same waves she had once found so beautiful now felt cold and indifferent. The reality of her choices sank in. She had lost Tomas, and now she had lost Adrian too. One day, while walking along the beach, Selene found herself alone, facing the vast ocean. The waves rolled in, crashing against the shore, and for the first time in a long while, she felt truly alone. She had everything: her beauty, her charm, the attention of men, but in the end, none of it had brought her happiness. She had chased after excitement and adventure, but all she had found was emptiness. She thought of Thomas, of the love they had shared. She thought of Eva, her childhood friend, who had always been content with her quiet life. Selene had sought more, but now she realized that the simple life Thomas had offered her was what she had really wanted all along. But it was too late. Tomas had moved on, and Adrian had left her behind. Selene was left with nothing but the crashing waves and the emptiness in her heart. As the sun set over the sea, Selene finally understood the cost of her actions. She had used her beauty, her charm, to manipulate others, but in the end, it had only led to loneliness. The adventure she had sought had turned out to be a lie, and she was left with nothing but the quiet, cold beach